Hey guys, so yep, I have a brand new skin now. Yippee! Okay. Hey guys, Pokkecorp back again, and this is gonna be our first ever Stella Sora guide content. And today we're gonna be talking about our very first Umbra Vanguard Firenze. Fraven. You know what? I'm calling out Fraven, alongside other limited Vanguards that were released. Now, Fraven's strength is going to be summoning shadows that deals Umbra damage, which can be tweaked using a skill path build or a summon path build. This makes her the very first Vanguard that uses a summon build. Although it is still a very niche build itself, she can bring a lot to the table with her damage. Now, before we proceed, I already know that there are a couple of people saying that Firenze is not going to be too strong with regards to the Vanguards, but I will just give it a couple of days. Min-maxing Klaudere, we're going to be coming out with a better build, and especially from the people from the JP server, so keep your eyes on the lookout for these kind of brand new content as well as brand new guides for Firenze. For this guide, we're just going through how our kit actually is going to be working for a more baseline level. So for our kit, the Blooming Shadow is going to be a basic 4 attack screen that deals Umbra damage, and if there aren't any shadows on the field, every second hit of the auto attack will summon a shadow. The 4th attack will then command all shadows to do a sprint strike, dealing Umbra minion damage. For the main skill, Firenze will do a combo slash with a cane, dealing Umbra skill damage, and every single skill cast will also summon a shadow, and every skill cast then commands all summon shadows to do a combo slash with Firenze that deals Umbra minion damage. Now, both Firenze as well as her shadow can trigger Umbra mark upon a skill cast, inflicting Dark Burn that deals Umbra mark damage. And then for the support skill, Ring of Night is going to be where she strikes the ground dealing AoE Umbra support skill damage. The skill itself summons then 2 shadows, and when the main trigger attacks, the shadows will also attack alongside the main trigger, dealing Umbra minion damage. Now both the skill cards as well as the shadows can trigger Umbra mark, inflicting Dark Burn. And finally for the ultimate, she summons like a rectangle or like a circle, dealing Umbra ultimate damage. Now this ultimate can also once again trigger Umbra mark. So regarding the skill priority, we're definitely going to be focused on the main skill, followed by the ultimate, followed by the basic, and we're pretty much not going to be touching on the support skill by itself from what we have seen so far. Now looking at the builds as well as potential, this is going to be the very interesting one because the first build path will be to focus on the skills, and the second build path will be focusing on the shadows. So for the skill build, it will focus on doing skill damage while triggering marks to deal additional damage to the enemies. Now this build is a lot more consistent in terms of damage output, and typically high risk and flash break is going to be your go-to potential, leaving Dark Pirate more on the optional side. So Step Kicking is going to be the main potential that deals additional AoE Umbra skill damage. Nimble Step is also a main potential that can create a domain which AoE Umbra skill damage while increasing Firenze's skill damage by itself, which also triggers Umbra mark. For high risk, it is a rare potential that deals additional Umbra skill damage with 40% chance, further increased to 80% when the target is afflicted with the Dark Burn. For Dark Pirate is the common potential that increases attack percentage after triggering Umbra mark. And lastly, Flash Break is a common potential that increases skill damage after damaging enemies with auto attacks all the way up to 3 stacks. So now we're going to be moving into our summoner build, and this is going to be our first ever summoner build, I guess outside from Christmas Allowed, which is going to be a sub DPS. So in Firenze's case, she will summon a shadow of herself up to 5 Firenzes on the battlefield all at the same time. Now this build path will focus purely on shadow counts as well as shadow minion damage, so you will definitely want Extended Shift as well as Accurate Coincidence as your main priority potentials, potentially Gloomy Veil left at level 1 just for the limit increase. So for Phantom Waltz, this is the main potential that will generate 1 shadow every 5 seconds, increasing the cap after casting your main skill. Shadow Step is another main potential where once a shadow disappears, it will then explode, dealing Umbra minion damage. This can also increase the limit of your shadow generator for every single Umbra tracker in the squad, which is going to be our mono Umbra team with Yada as well as Cosmetic. Extended Shift is going to be a rare potential that allows shadow to last longer and increase Umbra minion damage. Then Gloomy Veil is a common potential that increases the max limit by 1 and increases the Umbra damage. And lastly, Accurate Coincidence is going to be a common potential that allows Firenze to skip to the 4th attack after skill cast, also increasing your Shadow's Umbra damage. Now with these two builds in mind, this is going to be the more generic potentials, and you can kind of mix and match synergizing with your main build path. Typically, all of this could be high priorities in your build, like the ultimate potentials, place your bets, and instant liquidation. You also have Hunting Command that can increase your Umbra damage based on your Umbra party count, and dodge buff potentials like Clone Trick and Announcement Time. So for Hunting Command, it is a rare potential that increases your armor damage for every single armor trigger, making it generally very nice. Clone Tree is going to be allowing your Firenze to dodge through barriers, increasing Umbra minion damage. Announcement Time allows you to dodge 1 additional time, as well as increase your attack after dodging for quality of life. And Instant Liquidation is going to be allowing your Firenze to absorb all of her shadows when casting an ultimate, and every single shadow absorb will increase your ultimate damage all the way up to 5 seconds. So this is going to be going towards the ultimate cycling build. And an Instant P is going to be common potential to increase your ultimate crit rate for 5 seconds when you deal damage to the target. And lastly, Place Your Bet is going to be increasing ultimate damage up to 10 stacks for 20 seconds when triggering an Umbra mark. Now, moving on to the talents or her dupes, T1 is going to be when you trigger the Umbra mark, increases the Umbra damage of Firenze and Shadow Clone all the way up to 21% for 5 seconds. Soulful Strength is increasing your attack by 20%, as well as the minion damage by 20% for 5 seconds. And then T3 is going to be after casting your skill, increase your attack by 20% and the minion damage by 20% for another 8 seconds. Tavro is going to be an ultimate damage increase for 4% for 10 seconds, all the way up to 80% total. And lastly, T5 is going to be all Umbra squad increase Firenze's Umbra damage by 20%. Generally speaking, I would say for the talents, unless you're changing for the dupes, whether you like the character or not, you don't really plan to get the next character. My recommendation is not really going for this too much to begin with, especially in Style Star, which I think that dupes don't really change the big way that you play the game. If you do want to go for dupes, getting a T1 is going to be very nice, and then T4 followed by T5, because T2 and T3 have less impact than previously mentioned. Now, this could honestly change once we get another Umbra unit that can buff minion build damage at the moon, which is going to be tier 5, so that's when T2 and T3 is going to be a lot stronger. At the time of recording this, both Firenze's scale build and minion build is going to be pretty decent, with her T1 increasing their mark damage. Since Firenze's ultimate needs quite some time to charge, you have plenty of time to activate the full stacks of T4. So that's pretty much about it, and let's just move on to the diss session. So for a signature disc Wisteria Dream, its melody skill is increasing your squad's Umbra damage, and the main Umbra trigger is going to be allowing to gain a stack of Reverence every single time summoning a minion, each stack increasing your minion damage as a whole. So when every single main trigger deals damage, once again the target will take increased Umbra minion damage for 4 seconds. Then its Harmony skill is going to be increase your ultimate damage for Umbra triggers, as well as increasing your main trigger's skill damage. So this is pretty much going to be your best slot option, but I would say that we do have quite a lot of different alternatives if you do not want to go for Wisteria Dream, especially if you do want to chase the minion damage build. So Mystic is signature light cone, which swing is actually pretty good as well, because it increases your squad's Umbra damage by 20%, and when a support skill is casted, it will gain increased additional effect for 8 seconds. Now for the Harmony skill, any Umbra trigger casting a support skill, giving you an attack buff as well as minion damage buff, increasing your ultimate damage as well as when triggering an Umbra mark, an additional effect is going to be increased, and the Umbra minions get an additional damage for 4 seconds. And then lastly, we have our third option if you want to get this from the Battle Pass, which is Dream Factory of the Truth, essentially applying your vulnerability as well as Umbra damage taken, so it's a pretty good pickup if you want to decide to pick this. If you're going to be free to play, don't worry about it, because there are going to be 2 SSR discs that are free from the endgame shop, which you can then claim and get at dupes, these being those with Ambition as well as the Meow. Main slot wise, those with Ambition will be better for the shield effect, and the Meow melody effects are only good on its own mode. Then finally, our newest Umbra economy disc, the Butt of Change, which increases both minion and skill damage, is perfectly aligned to Firenze's build paths. If you are missing any of the mentioned Umbra discs, don't worry, because you can use the previous economy disc purely as a statistic. The attack percentage difference can make up for the lack of this if you're going to be missing from the slots. Although if you are going to be a new player, there are plenty of force outs you can get from the gacha if you're lucky, or you can just buy them from the shop I called Sweet Invitation. Now, moving on to the emblems, this is going to be the stats that you want to chase for. Don't really worry about getting every single stat line shown in this video, as long as you can get from this list. Your Firenze will be able to do a job. First of all, level 70, we're going to be going for Pen, will be the bread and butter, followed by Charging Efficiency main, since as of right now, her ultimate does a massive amount of damage, especially when the enemies are at their broken state. Umbra damage is nice to have, along with other 3, which is going to be Umbra minion, ultimate damage, as well as skill damage. You don't need all these, but it helps you according to your build. For the level 80 emblem, is also similar to level 70, except that we can fish out 3 additional levels for ultimate, skill, and auto attack. Most important again is we're gonna be Pen as well as ultimate, as the possibility of the ultimate potentials can be used near future. Then moving to the skill or auto attack, whichever fits your current build more, as well as a little bit more charge efficiency to improve rotations. Lastly, for level 90 emblems, different sets of stats once again, since we're going to be fishing for additional levels for potentials, which can be the trickiest and hardest RNG to deal with, as there are a lot of potentials. So even if you're going to be finding them, getting a +2 is going to be really nice, but if you want to reroll for a +3, that's going to take, like, classic gacha games. Hunting Command will be your safest option because it's used for both builds. High risk and extended shift will depend on what build you're going to be using, and Place Your Bets is nice to have, since more ultimate damage is always going to be very nice. Now finally we can move into the team compositions as well as the records, right? Now do note, as of this time of recording, Firenze is tier 5, which is going to be a little bit unfortunate, especially when compared to Fuyuka, compared to Christmas Lalu, Nazuka, as well as Shia, right? So also shout out to my executive manager, whatever, blah, blah. Now moving on to the team comments and records, we do have Yada and Kosetti, and Yada is going to be Mystic, right? They are going to be our standard team of Umbra. They have been waiting for their queen to save them from the pits of despair because nobody has been using Umbra damage for the longest time. But now, can she actually bring the Umbra team to potential? Currently, the minion build with Mystic isn't doing the greatest unless you're going to be unlocking a tier 1, which will increase every Umbra's minion damage and is a very significant talent increase, especially for Firenze with this build. Although you can still clear without it, it won't be as good as its counterpart. Now, the skill build is going to be taking over since the day of launch, has currently 3 different teams. Firstly, Mystic, she doesn't really have to have that many great potentials, but you can always slot in the optional potentials if you feel like you want to do a little bit more damage. However, Kosetti's potentials will come into play with the amount of debuffs it can cast on the enemy target with Umbra damage taken. For Talia, the Bonnet of Stellar Sora, which is bound to be in everyone's team comps, whether she's banned slot or not. She is right there where you need a unit to cope with, as she gives a decent amount of attack buff using a trick boost as well as a brilliant relay. Now, for a more niche build option, Chirisha is actually quite an anomaly because she provides both buffs to her minions as well as Chirisha herself, which is similar to Mystique but providing more buffs. However, the difference is losing on Hunting Command's full effect. And finally, Minova, where she does give a ton of attack buffs with fervent applause, letting Firenze do both minion damage and ultimate perfectly. With this build, you can choose whatever other additional potential you're going to be going for if you still have the extra slots. So with that, we are going to come into the summary of Firenze. We are going to wrap up with some closing thoughts over here. Firenze is undoubtedly going to be a very strong vanguard, but it doesn't seem to go hand in hand with Mystique unless we get a particular dupe. We're also lacking a dedicated support that could buff minion damage as well as Umbra damage together, and due to that, we could be expecting either a Umbra support or a versatile slot like Nazuka to complement her minion build path in the future. Now, since the records we've gotten are still in the tier crafting stage, we will be expecting a lot of new builds that could shake the meta, just like how Shia, Fuyuka, and Nazuka did. Overall, Firenze is strong and our only Umbra Vanguard to be released so far, but currently is not going to be as strong as compared to other limited Vanguards, especially when you take into considerations their team compositions. Her winners show that despite her ultimate dealing insane damage, it is lagging behind with a very slow energy regeneration unless you slot in charge efficiency with your emblems. So with that, we come to the end of our very quick little Stellar Sora guide for Firenze. Let me know what you guys have been thinking of this unit as well as you've been playing. Drop a couple of comments down below. All the best, my Gacha Fools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.